Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Dane. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today, we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 1, Part 3 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Kamraun thinks this is the best fantasy story ever written, and wants to share his love of the series with you. And in this instance, he has not led me astray.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains extreme violence and highly offensive behaviors, and thus is not suitable for children or adults sensitive to this content. I really mean that. This is a section that receives a lot of criticism and feedback, so don't listen if you have a sensitivity to this type of stuff.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, so send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right, today as we go through this section, I want you to think about actions that contribute towards generational hatred. We're going to have some examples we'll come across, and we can tie it up at the end.
Okay.
All right, Chapter 1, Part 3. Among the Teblor, the Rathid bred the fewest horses. Despite this, there were plenty of wide runs from glade to glade down which Karsa and his companions could ride. In one of the clearings, they had come upon an adult and two youths tending to 6 destriers. They had ridden them down. Are you the youths? What's going on here?
That's exactly it.
My cousin Vinny?
Yeah. I can't. I'm sorry. Every time I hear two youths, and it's not even that often that I would come across that, but yes. A what? A what?
A youth.
What is a youth? Sorry. Continue.
They had ridden them down, blades flashing, pausing only to collect trophies and gather up the horses, each taking 2 on a lead. An hour before darkness fell, they came to a forking of the trail, rode down the lower of the 2 for 30 paces, then released the leads and drove the Rathid horses on. The 3 Urid warriors then slipped a single short rope around the necks of their own mounts, just above the collarbones, and with gentle alternating tugs walked them backwards until they reached the fork, whereupon they proceeded onto the higher trail. 50 paces ahead, Delum dismounted and backtracked to obscure their trail. I thought this backtracking of the horses was an incredibly clever way to confuse the hunting parties that would inevitably come after them.
If I recall, Delum has done this several times in this chapter alone. Like earlier on, he'd done similar things to confuse the trail. He seems to be really good at this kind of stuff.
What stood out to me here in particular was just the walking backwards of the horses. Most of the time, you don't think of people walking horses backwards. And so that was a little bit above and beyond. Yeah, he's a tracker, so he's very cognizant of the marks they're leaving and what he's seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the horses, I thought that was pretty cool what they did there.
Well, I wonder, too, if you're walking them backwards, if it gives the impression of even more of a number. Because, I mean, at least it's doubling if you're walking the horses forward and then walking them back.
Oh, actually, yeah, it'd be hard for them to... Oddly, I had envisioned their feet going exactly in the same spots. That's not going to happen. That's a ridiculous image. It's just like the perfect con, right? It's like exactly where your feet... No, okay. Yeah, you're right. It would look like a doubling of the horses.
I mean, I like your image, too. I mean, if you've got...
It's ridiculous these horses, now that you bring it up.
Well, no, these horses they're a cut above. So maybe they could. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. With the wheel taking shape overhead, they cut away from the rocky path and found a small clearing in which they made camp. Byroth cut slices of the bear meat, and they ate. Delum then rose to attend to the horses, using wet moss to wipe them down. The beasts were tired and left unhobbled to allow them to walk the clearing and stretch their necks. Examining his wounds, Karsa noted that they had already begun to knit. So it was among the Teblor. Satisfied, he found his flask of blood oil and set to repairing his weapon. Delum rejoined them, and he and Byroth followed suit. Karsa had taken what we would consider some fairly serious damage, and has already done a noticeable amount of healing. These Teblor are in absolute terror, man. If they're genetic anomalies and they're able to heal this quickly as well.
Yeah, they seem to be aware of it too, because even when Karsa took those wounds, you know, that deep stab and everything, he was like, kind of minor wounds, not too concerned about it. And I don't know exactly how much time has passed here. It doesn't seem like very long, but to see that they're already healing up between now and that last battle is pretty impressive.
I don't think it's been very long at all. They still have that bear meat. It would start to rot relatively quickly, I think.
Yeah. What could it have been? Maybe a day, 2 days?
Yeah,
3
that's
days?
what I'm
I don't
thinking.
know.
Like relatively short, under a week. Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah.
I was thinking more on the order of like 1 to 2 days, maybe.
Mm.
Karsa said, "Tomorrow we leave this trail." Byroth asked, "Down to the wider, easier ones in the valley?" Delim said, "If we are quick, we can pass through Rathid land in a single day." Karsa said, "No, we lead our horses higher, onto the goat and sheep trails, and we reverse our path for the length of the morning. Then we ride down into the valley once more. Byroth Guild, with the hunt out, who will remain in the village?" Byroth drew out his new bear cloak and wrapped it about himself before he said, "Utes." "Women, the old and the crippled." Karsa asked, "Dags?" I need to stop with this. All right. Karsa asked, "Dog?"
You rascal.
Karsa asked, "Dogs?" Byroth said, "No, the hunt will have taken those. So, war leader, we attack the village." Karsa said, "Yes. Then we find the hunt's trail."
No mercy here, knowing that there's going to be no warriors left, but still going in to probably slaughter women, young, old, no F's given.
So it is among the Teblor.
Indeed.
Yeah. I wonder how much of this has been going on forever with these raiding parties between these tribes. I mean, it sounds like it hasn't been happening too much of late, but there had to be some history there. They kind of keep to their own lands, and we'll get to some stuff here a little bit later. We can talk more about it, in terms of what they do to each other.
Right.
Delim drew a deep breath and was slow on its release. He said, "Karsa Orlong, the village of our victims thus far is not the only village. In the first valley alone, there are at least 3 more. Word will go out. Every warrior will ready his sword. Every dog will be unleashed and sent out into the forest. The warriors may not find us, but the dogs will." Byroth growled, "And then there are 3 more valleys to cross." Karsa said, "Small ones. And we cross them at the south ends, a day or more hard riding from the north mouths and the heart of the Rathid lands." Delim said, "There will be such a foment of anger pursuing us, war leader, that they will follow us into the valleys of the Sunid." Karsa flipped the blade on his thighs to begin work on the other side. He said, "So I hope," Delim thored. "Answer me this. When last have the Sunid seen an Urid?" Byroth said, "Your grandfather." Karsa nodded, then said, "And we well know the Rathid war cry, do we not?" Byroth said, "You would start a war between the Rathid and Sunid?" Karsa said, "Aye, Byroth." Byroth slowly shook his head. He said, "We are not yet done with the Rathid, Karsa Orlong. You plan too far in advance, war leader." Karsa said, "Witness what comes, Byroth Guild." Byroth picked up the bear skull. The lower jaw still hung from it by a single strip of gristle. He snapped it off and tossed it to one side. Then he drew out a spare bundle of leather straps. He began tightly wrapping the cheekbones, leaving long lengths dangling beneath. Karsa watched these efforts curiously. The skull was too heavy even for Byroth to wear as a helm. Moreover, he would need to break the bone away on the underside, where it was thickest around the hole that the spinal cord made. Delim rose and announced, "I shall sleep now," as he moved off. Byroth said, "Karsa Orlong, do you have spare straps?" Karsa said, "You are welcome to them," also rising. He added, "Be sure to sleep this night, Byroth Guild." Byroth said, "I will." When you think of it in your mind, how big do you see this thing?
When I hear that it's too big for him to wear, I kind of think of like double the size of his head.
What is that, like 1.5 feet wide or something?
Maybe that's closer to like 2 to 3 feet in length and maybe like, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall.
That's huge. That's crazy.
It certainly seems quite large.
Yeah. For the first hour of light, they heard dogs in the forested valley floor below. These faded as they backtracked along a high cliffside path. When the sun was directly overhead, Delim found a downward wending trail and they began the descent. Midway through the afternoon, they came upon stump-crowded clearings and could smell the smoke of the village. Delim dismounted and slipped ahead. He returned a short while later and said, "As you surmised, war leader, I saw 11 elders, thrice as many women, and 13 youths, all very young. I imagine the older ones are with the hunt. No horses, no dogs." He climbed back onto his horse. The 3 Urid warriors readied their swords. Then they each drew out their flasks of blood oil and sprinkled a few drops around the nostrils of their destriers. Heads snapped back, muscles tensed. That stuff sure seems useful. Multi-use. He's fixing his sword with it, and then they're using it like smelling salts for the horses here.
Yeah, very interesting stuff, whatever this blood oil actually is. Multi-purpose indeed.
Byroth said, I have the right flank. Karsa said, and I the center. Delim said, and so I the left. Then frowned. He added, they will scatter from you, war leader. Karsa said, I am feeling generous today, Delim Thord. This village shall be to the glory of you and Byroth. Be sure that no one escapes on the other side. Delim said, none shall. Karsa said, and if any woman seeks to fire a house to turn the hunt, slay her. Byroth said, they would not be so foolish. If they do not resist, they shall have our seed, but they shall live. The three removed the reins from their horses and looped them around their waists. They edged further onto their mounts' shoulders and drew their knees up. Karsa slipped his wrist through the sword's thong and whirled the weapon once through the air to tighten it. The others did the same. Beneath him, Havoc trembled. That whirling of the blade, I thought that would probably look pretty cool to tighten up the strap. I imagine this is a pretty big sword, so he's like flipping it around to tighten it up. How do you picture that?
As you read through that, I heard, I guess comically so, the sound effect from like a Conan the Barbarian movie as he like, whoosh, whoosh, as it like whips around his head. And it's like, you know, some epic music starts playing or something. Yeah.
So your mention of Conan reminds me, I saw an article that Frank Frazella just had a fantasy Conan painting sold for $13 million at auction.
Whoa.
It was a really cool painting. I know Billy had mentioned Frank Frazella before, and you and I had been talking about different art styles that we liked in relation to how we envision these books.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a crazy amount of money for a painting, but still.
I mean, it could have been Karsa. I think that's a lot of how I envision Karsa was probably driven by those barbarian Conan images that you see.
Yeah.
Delim said, lead us, war leader. A slight pressure launched Havoc forward, 3 strides into a canter, slow and almost loping as they crossed the stump-filled glade. A slight shifting to the left led them towards the main path. Reaching it, Karsa lifted his sword into the destrier's range of vision. The beast surged into a gallop. 7 lengthening strides brought them to the village. Karsa's companions had already split away to either side to come up behind the houses, leaving him the main artery. He saw figures there, directly ahead, heads turning. A scream rang through the air, children scattered. Sword lashed out, chopped down easily through young bone. Karsa glanced to his right and Havoc shifted direction, hoofs kicking out to gather in and trample an elder. They plunged onward, pursuing, butchering. On the far sides of the houses, beyond the refuse trenches, more screams sounded. Karsa reached the far end. He saw a single youth racing for the trees and drove after him. The lad carried a practice sword. Hearing the heavy thump of Havoc's charge closing fast, and with the safety of the forest still too far in front of him, he wheeled. Karsa's swing cut through the practice sword, then neck. A head thrust from Havoc sent the youth's decapitated body sprawling. He thought, I lost a cousin in such a manner, ridden down by a rathid, ears and tongue taken, body strung by 1 foot from a branch, the head propped beneath, smeared in excrement. The deed is answered. Answered. And so the cycle continues. This is how you get situations where you have generational hatred where neither side is willing to reconcile with the other. I thought what they did to Karsa's cousin sounds absolutely horrible, and all of that desecration of the body only added fuel to the fire. Somehow I don't think they did this in isolation. It was probably an answer to a prior equally horrific incident done to them, and then it just back and forth over generations.
Yeah. I wonder too if some of these have an escalation element as well. Maybe somebody gets killed. You just get, we'll call it a normal killing. You just get beheaded or something like that. And then the other side takes offense, and then they do something like what they did to Karsa's cousin. And they're like, all right, we're going to desecrate this body. And then every time is another escalation for what they're doing. Now it's not just I'm going to kill one. Now I'm going to take out your whole village. And it kind of just keeps spiraling and spiraling. I wonder if something like that could happen.
That reminds me of the first raid that we saw earlier in the book where Karsa ran through the center and killed basically everybody but let one youth get away.
Yeah.
One of those guys was systemically tortured by Byroth and Delim. He was on the ground screaming already, and they were just taking off pieces of him little by little instead of just outright killing him. You remember?
Mm-hmm.
If that youth heard any of that or saw any of that, that leaves a scar, and then they're going to grow up, and then they're going to lead a war party in answer to whoever this was. Could have been their dad, their brother, uncle, whatever.
I get the feeling that they almost want it because he let him get away with the knowledge that that's what's going to happen.
And they cautioned him. I think Byroth or Dellum cautioned him and said, hey, this guy's going to come back for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Havoc slowed, then wheeled. Karsa looked back upon the village. Byroth and Dellum had done their slaughter and were now herding the women into the clearing surrounding the village hearth. At a trot, Havoc carried him back into the village. Okay, I'll take a moment to warn again that we're about to discuss a highly divisive and controversial section of the book. Skip forward 5 to 10 minutes if you're upset by this topic. I would also advise anyone that's listening to this next section to look at this not from the viewpoint of someone in today's world with our laws and feelings on human rights. Instead, view it in the context of this society and their normalized practices. Similar to how the situation of the Revi women making sport of betting each other's husbands, quote unquote, by accident makes no sense to me in our current modern society. I had to look at that situation in the context of that culture and how they normalize that practice there. Neither one of Dane and I are saying what's happening here is okay. It's just we're going to view it as they're practicing it from their perspective and the reactions of the characters in that context.
Yeah. I always try and just keep in the back of my mind, like as I was reading through these books the first time, it could be upsetting to a lot of people, but it's like, this is still just a piece of fantasy fiction, and just kind of always keep those glasses on. This is just fantasy.
Karsa announced, the chief's own belong to me. Byroth and Dellum nodded, and he could see their heightened spirits from the ease with which they surrendered the privilege. Byroth faced the women and gestured with his sword. A middle-aged, handsome woman stepped forward, followed by a younger version, a lass perhaps the same age as Dalis. Both studied Karsa as carefully as he did them. Karsa said, Byroth Guild and Dellum Thord, take your first among the others. I will guard. The two warriors grinned, dismounted, and plunged among the women to select one each. They vanished into separate houses, leading their prizes by the hand. Karsa watched with raised brows. The chief's wife snorted and said, your warriors were not blind to the eagerness of those two. Karsa said, their warriors, be their father or mate, will not be pleased with such eagerness. He thought, Urid women would not. The chief's wife said, they will never know, war leader, unless you tell them. And what is the likelihood of that? They will spare you no time for taunts before killing you. Ah, but I see now, she added, stepping closer to stare up at his face. She went on, you thought to believe that Urid women are different, and now you realize the lie of that. All men are fools, but now you are perhaps a little less so, as truth steals into your heart. What is your name, war leader? Karsa growled, you talk too much, and drew himself straight, then said, I am Karsa Orlong, grandson of Palk. That gesture of him puffing his chest out and standing up, very toddler. I feel like he's already put a level below her, the way he's being led by a little leash almost, like into this conversation. It's funny how he's being manipulated here. The chief's wife said, Palk? Karsa said, aye, and grinned. He said, I see you recall him. The chief's wife said, I was a child, but yes, he is well known among us. Karsa said, he lives still, and sleeps calm despite the curses you have laid upon his name. She laughed and said, curses? There are none. Palk bowed his head to beg passage through our lands. Karsa shouted, you lie! She studied him, then shrugged and said, as you say. I mean, she's running circles around him.
Indeed. Clearly a different recollection of those events that happened. And I just thought about this now. It's interesting that she would have those memories and Karsa would not. Like, how would she, I guess, be remembering older. These? That's true. I guess she's older, so relatively speaking, I guess the Urid would not pass those memories on. They would keep those secret, their own sort of...
They wouldn't know.
The truth is what Palk makes it.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yes. I thought that Palk tidbit was interesting. And why would the chief's wife lie about this? Mm-hmm. And if she is telling the truth, what does that say about Palk twisting Karsa's mind with all these lies and driving a wedge between him and his father?
Yeah, true.
Again, the way that she's able to sow these seeds of psychological uncertainty within him, it's like really great psychological warfare. I'm sure many of our male listeners have been led around in a fashion. You're in an argument with a female partner. You're walked into an ambush. You're being ambushed from all directions and played with in this manner. And I feel like This is doing a really good job of showing how women are just better at communication in many cases and using words as weapons instead of simply just using power.
Well, that line, just as you say, kind of a throwaway, dismissive, you can hear like the shrug, in it, just like, all right, and like you said, that plants that seed immediately. Like I hear that and that seed is planted and it's like, what is going on here? I like it. It's very, very good.
One of the women cried out from one of the houses, a cry more pleasure than pain. The chief's wife turned her head and asked, "How many of us will take your seed, war leader?" Karsa settled back and said, "All of you, 11 each." The chief's wife said, "And how many days will that take? You want us to cook for you as well?" Man. She's too clever by far.
It's also interesting to me this behavior that she's displaying. She's not holding her tongue as you might expect somebody who, there's a war party coming in. She seems to have no fear. And I wonder if this is part of like the tribal upbringing. These raids happen historically. This kind of thing is anticipated, or maybe even it's expected that one day, some tribe is going to come in and this is going to happen. So maybe she doesn't have any fear of death. So, given that lip, it's no big deal to her. She's just ready for whatever comes.
That's a good question, and it's kind of hard to answer. I look at it a couple of different ways. Like it could be a normalized practice among the tribes where there's kind of a system here. This has happened before, seen it happen before. So they know that if they act a certain way, they're going to live. They're not going to get killed. Also, part of me thinks, as the chief's wife, she's a very important member of the tribe, and many of the women probably look to her as a role model. And I could see her as keeping on a brave face so that the other women follow suit and not getting hysterical in this situation as another possibility. And then it could also be to prevent their captors from getting any pleasure from their subjugation. Some sadist types might be looking for that type of reaction where the women are hysterical and they want to see the reaction from them. And the attacker gets more pleasure that way because they're seeing the suffering, so it's like, I'm not going to give this to you.
Yeah, that's a couple of good points.
But it could be any of those, all of those, who knows? None of those.
Maybe.
Could be something else entirely.
Yeah.
In response to her question about how long this will take, Karsa said, "Days? You think as an old woman. We are young, and if need be, we have blood oil." The woman's eyes widened. The others behind her began murmuring and whispering. The chief's wife spun and silenced them with a look. Then she faced Karsa once more and said, jumping back, when she spins and silences them with a look, there's a level of control going on here.
Yeah.
She faced Karsa once more and said, "You have never used blood oil in this fashion before, have you? It is true, you will know fire in your loins, but you will know stiffness for days to come. But, war leader, you do not know what it will do to each of us women. I do, for I too was young and foolish once. Even my husband's strength could not keep my teeth from his throat, and he carries the scars still. There is more. What for you will last less than a week haunts us for months." Karsa said, "And so, if we do not kill your husbands, you will upon their return. I am pleased." The chief's wife said, "You three will not survive the night." Karsa smiled and said, "It will be interesting, do you not think? Who among Byroth, Delam, and me will find need for it first?" He addressed all the women. "I suggest to each of you to be eager, so you are not the first to fail us." Byroth appeared, nodded at Karsa. The chief's wife sighed and waved her daughter forward. Karsa said no. The woman stopped, suddenly confused. She said, "But will you not want a child from this? Your first will carry the most seed." Karsa said, "Aye, it will. Are you past bearing age?" After a long moment, she shook her head. She whispered, "Karsa Orlong, you invite my husband to set upon you a curse. He will burn blood on the stone lips of Imroth herself." Karsa said, "Yes, that is likely." He dismounted, approached her, and said, "Now, lead me to your house." She drew back and said, "The house of my husband? War leader, no, please. Let us choose another one." Karsa growled, "Your husband's house. I am done talking, and so are you." An hour before dusk, and Karsa led the last of his prizes toward the house, the chief's daughter. He and Byroth and Delam had not needed the blood oil, a testament, Byroth claimed, to Urid prowess, though Karsa suspected that true honor belonged to the zeal and desperate creativity of the women of the Rathid, and even then the last few for each of the warriors had been peremptory. As he drew the young woman into the gloomy house with its dying hearth, Karsa swung shut the door and dropped the latch. She turned to face him, a curious tilt to her chin. She said, Mother said you were surprisingly gentle. He eyed her and thought, she is as Dayless, yet not. There is no dark streak within this one. That is a difference. He said, remove your clothes. She quickly climbed out of the one-piece hide tunic and said, had I been first, Karsa Orlong, I would have made home for your seed. Such is this day in my wheel of time. Karsa asked, you would have been proud? She paused to give him a startled look, then shook her head and said, you have slain all the children, all the elders. It will be centuries before our village recovers, and indeed may not, for the anger of the warriors may turn them on each other, and on us women should you escape. Karsa said, escape? Lie down there, where your mother did. Karsa Orlong is not interested in escape. He moved forward to stand over her and went on, your warriors will not be returning. The life of this village is ended, and within many of you there shall be the seed of the Urid. Go there, all of you, to live among my people, and you and your mother go to the village where I was born. Await me, raise your children, my children, as Urid.
When I read this was unexpected. To suggest that they go back to his village as though they would just be greeted with open arms from one tribe to another. I don't know. I don't really know how to explain that. It just felt unusual that would be the thought process for him.
I wonder if there's a precedent for it among the tribes. I would think that a tribe would probably suspect some shenanigans if some girl comes in and maybe like they're infiltrating to help prepare for some type of raid potentially. I don't know. Maybe they have to put them under watch if they're going to take them in. Maybe they have enough population issues that they look at a woman coming in asking to live there as something that would benefit the tribe too.
It's possible also, I just wondered, they all know that these three went off raiding. A woman shows up on their doorstep and says, Karsa decimated our village. Here we are. Maybe it's like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. Everything tracks here, and they would take them. But still, like you mentioned before, if they have such animosity and hatred towards the other tribes for the things that would go on, I still think it would be unusual to be like, all right, it's a group of wrathed women. We'll just take them all in, and that'll be perfectly fine.
I think they would. Historically, people have done this. They kill the men, and then they take the women and incorporate them into their culture, you know?
Okay.
I think that's just the way humans have done it for a long time, tribes. Her assessment of the damage this raid has caused to the tribe is wild to me. It's centuries of damage. And I guess it makes sense if an 80-year-old is considered to be the equivalent of around someone 18 years of our age. That's a terrible tragedy. For her to say that the warriors would turn on their own women in anger should Karsa and company escape the hunting party kind of shows a bit more about this society in a bad way.
Yeah. But then I wonder if we're talking about the passage of time and they're 80 years, it sounds bad to us, but if it is 18 years, maybe it's not as long of a time for them.
I don't know, man. Time is time. And if the earth is turning at a certain rate, that's a good question. Like, how does a Tistandi look at a day versus a human?
Right.
This isn't quite to that length, but it's an interesting question. Like, what someone that's so long lived, what do they look at as a day?
We're looking at it at Earth years too, but they're not on Earth, right? They're on...
Think about it this way. A human in this world has a day. Same amount of hours as a Tistandi. How do they all interpret that time? Because the time is the time.
It's true.
Just because you live longer doesn't mean it's less time.
Yeah.
It takes the same amount of time to hunt, the same amount of time to cook.
Yeah.
It's just more, and it takes longer to grow.
I don't know. That's an interesting conundrum for how they would process that. I don't know. I guess I never give it too much thought for when they say centuries of damage and things like that. It is a considerable amount of time, but I guess I kind of speed through it and never really processed it. Interesting.
The way I think about it is almost like the gestation of rats versus elephants. Because
Okay.
How long does it take to make more elephants versus rats? Rats can reproduce multiple, or pigs is another example, right? Pigs become fertile pretty quickly, and they can have multiple piglets. I think they can have, is it twice a year they can have, or maybe rats is a better example. They can have, what do they call them, broods? Is it a brood?
Or is it litters? Do pigs have, or do rats have litters?
I don't know. But yeah, multiple times a year they get pregnant and give birth. Whereas an elephant, it's like once a year. I think their gestation period is not that far off of ours. I think it's like maybe once a year, maybe. I'd have to look that up. That's kind of how I look at it, is for some species, it seems to be a lot more damaging than others because of how long it takes to grow up. And probably also the pregnancy term is probably pretty long too, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good point, that how long it takes to reproduce. That whole process does take a lot longer to do. So yeah, I guess centuries of damage in that regard does make far more sense. Not like rabbits, like you said, where next month it doesn't matter. We've got another set of children coming in.
Yeah. She said, "You make bold claims, Karsa Orlong." He began removing his leathers. She added, "More than claims, I see. No need, then, for blood oil." Karsa said, "We will save the blood oil, you and I, for my return." Her eyes widened, and she leaned back as he moved down over her. In a small voice, she asked, "Do you not wish to know my name?" He growled, "No, I will call you Dalis." And he saw nothing of the shame that filled her young, beautiful face, nor did he sense the darkness his words clawed into her soul. Within her, as within her mother, Karsa Orlong's seed found a home.
So a couple things came to my mind, like how the women, I guess, react to how this is happening to them. Part of me, my mind jumps to, like, in the animal kingdom, I think of, like, some nature channels. Male lion comes in, takes over a pride, kills the children, and mates with the lionesses, and starts that, that process starts over. I mean, again, these are human types and animals, but the lionesses are not killing the male lion that comes in. It's just the process, I guess. They're going along with it. So I wonder if it's just kind of a cycle that takes place. As we alluded to earlier, the chieftain's wife, she seems to be aware that this is going to be happening. Maybe it's just that cycle. I'm not sure.
They seem to understand that they're going to want to take certain actions. Like, she's recommending taking the daughter first because of this reason or that reason. Like, they understand the motivations where they're going to get children out of this. And I think that's part of it, where it's like a normalized thing among their society. This happens. I don't know how often it happens, but this tribal warfare type scenario. And then one thing that I had thought of was the war bride phenomenon. When people are put in really dire situations, like women in war-torn countries, they'll marry the conquering, invading army's soldiers because that's the only opportunity presented to them to have some type of life where they're supported with resources. At the end of the day, we're animals, and we're trying to survive. Sometimes it really just becomes about survival and what do I do to get through this situation?
Right. Yeah. I guess if you value your life more and you think I will put up with this as opposed to just getting killed because I refuse and fight and all that, I guess which path do you take? And in this, like you said, in this tribal society, I guess that's the road that they take.
I think from the perspective of someone that isn't trained to fight, it's a futile effort. Like the men, they would fight back because that's what they're there for. That's their duty, is to protect the village. But the women, if they're not trained to fight and they have trained warriors here, they don't really have much of a choice. I mean, they could fight back, but they know they're going to die, basically.
Right.
One thing that really bothered me about this, beyond, the obvious issues with looking at this from our standpoint in modern society and having issues with this taking place, is Karsa's treatment of the daughter. He didn't have to treat her like that and not want to know her name and all that kind of stuff. Like, really mean-spirited and bad. Kind of shows what type of a bad person he is at this point in the books. And I do wonder what type of seeds that sows for the future with her in terms of, like, how does this manifest? That's how, like, villains are born. When someone wrongs you that deeply, it starts a path in your life that you wouldn't have taken otherwise.
You're right. I mean, it was very dismissive. And you could see for him, it meant nothing. And for her, that's definitely going to burn an image and stay with her forever.
Yeah. A late storm had descended from the mountains, devouring the stars. Treetops thrashed to a wind that made no effort to reach lower, creating a roar of sound overhead and a strange calm among the bulls. Lightning flickered, but the thunder's voice was long in coming. They rode through an hour of darkness, then found an old campsite near the trail the hunt had left. The wrathed warriors had been careless in their fury, leaving far too many signs of their passage. Dellum judged that there were 12 adults and 4 youths on horseback in this particular party, perhaps a third of the village's entire strength. The dogs had already been set loose to range in packs on their own, and none accompanied the group the Urid now pursued. Karsa was well pleased. The hornets were out of the nest, yet flying blind. They ate once more the aging bear meat. Then Byroth once again unwrapped the bear skull and resumed winding straps, this time around the snout, pulling them taut between the teeth. The ends left dangling were long, an arm and a half in length. Karsa now understood what Byroth was fashioning. Often, 2 or 3 wolf skulls were employed for this particular weapon. Only a man of Byroth's strength and weight could manage the same with the skull of a gray bear.
I'm always amazed about what a brute Byroth must be. It's just impressive. And the fact that Karsa continues to be impressed by Byroth's size and strength and everything.
What type of build do you envision Byroth having? Like a Brian Shaw strongman type of build? Just a massive bear of a man with a huge barrel chest?
Definitely more strongman. I'm not sure, like Brian Shaw is kind of a tall guy. And for some reason, I always think of Byroth as shorter by maybe even like a head than Karsa, but wider and more stoutly built. But certainly like a Brian Shaw where everything is big. There's no weak point on him.
Karsa said, Byroth Guild, what you create shall make a bright thread in the legend we are weaving. Byroth grunted and said, I care nothing for legends, war leader, but soon we shall be facing Rathid on Destries. Karsa smiled in the darkness, said nothing. A soft wind flowed down from upslope. Delim lifted his head suddenly and rose in silence. He said, I smell wet fur. There had been no rain as yet. Karsa removed his sword harness and laid the weapon down. He whispered, Byroth, remain here. Delim, take with you your brace of knives. Leave your sword. He rose, gestured, and said, lead. Delim murmured, war leader. It is a pack, driven down from the high ground by the storm. They have no scent of us, yet their ears are sharp. Karsa asked, do you not think that they would have set to howling if they had heard us? Byroth snorted and said, Delim, beneath this roar they have heard nothing. But Delim shook his head and said, there are high sounds and there are low sounds, Byroth Guild, and they each travel their own stream. He swung to Karsa and said, to your question, war leader, this answer, possibly not, if they are unsure whether we are Urid or Rathid. Karsa grinned and said, even better, take me to them, Delim thored. I have thought long on this matter of Rathid dogs, the loosed packs. Take me to them, and keep your throwing knives close to hand. Havoc and the other two Destries had quietly flanked the warriors during the conversation, and now all faced upslope, ears pricked forward. After a moment's hesitation, Delim shrugged and, crouching, set off into the woods. Karsa followed. The slope grew steeper after a score of paces. There was no path, and fallen tree trunks made traverse difficult and slow, though thick swaths of damp moss made the passage of the two Tevlor warriors virtually noiseless. They reached a flatter shelf perhaps 15 paces wide and 10 deep, a high crack-riven cliff opposite. A few trees leaned against the rock, gray with death. Delim scanned the cliffside, then made to move towards a narrow, dirt-filled crevasse near the left end of the cliff that served as a game trail, but Karsa restrained him with a hand. He leaned close and asked, how far ahead? Delim said, 50 heartbeats. We've still time to make this climb. Karsa said, no, we position ourselves here. Take that ledge to the right and have your knives ready. With baffled expression, Delim did as he was told. The ledge was halfway up the cliffside. Within moments, he was in place. Karsa moved towards the game trail. A dead pine had fallen from above, taking the same path in its descent, coming to rest half a pace to the trail's left. Karsa reached it and gave the trunk a nudge. The wood was still sound. He quickly climbed it. Then, feet resting on the branches, he twisted round until he faced the flat expanse of the shelf, the game trail now almost within arm's reach to his left, the bowl and cliff at his back, then waited. He could not see Delim from his position unless he leaned forward, which might well put the tree away from the cliffside, taking him with it in a loud, probably damaging fall. He would have to trust, therefore, that Delim would grasp what he intended, and act accordingly when the time came. A skitter of stones down the trail. The dogs had begun the descent. Karsa drew a slow, deep breath and held it. The pack's leader would not be the first, most likely the second, a safe beat or two behind the scout.
I love that he knows what the dogs' minds would be in this situation.
It's pretty interesting to see his level of knowledge here with these animals.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he thought about this for a long time too. So it's almost like he's a student of war and this type of activities, like nerding out on all the little details of every little thing. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely has a mind for tactics, it seems. Every step of the way we see something he's planned. He even gets chastised by them where they say you think too far ahead, but apparently it's served them extremely well in each of these scenarios.
As long as the plan is going according to the plan, once it gets off plan, we'll see how he responds. But
I like that. The plan is going according to plan. Yeah.
The first dog scrambled past Karsa's position in a scatter of stones, twigs, and dirt, its momentum taking it a half dozen paces out onto the flat shelf, where it paused, nose lifting to test the air. Hackles rising, it moved cautiously towards the shelf's edge. Another dog came down the trail, a larger beast, this one kicking up more detritus than the first. As its scarred head and shoulders came into view, Karsa knew that he had found the pack's leader. The animal reached the flat, just as the scout began swinging his head around. Karsa leapt. His hands shot out to take the leader on the neck, driving the beast down, spinning it onto its back. His left hand closing on the throat, his right hand gripping both flailing, kicking front legs just above the paws. The dog flew into a frenzy beneath him, but Karsa held firm. More dogs tumbled in a rush down the trail, then fanned out in sudden alarm and confusion. The leader's snarls had turned to yelps. Savage teeth had ripped into Karsa's wrist, until he managed to push his chokehold higher under the dog's jaw. The animal writhed, but it had already lost, and they both knew it, as did the rest of the pack.
Have you ever been bitten by a dog?
No, how about you?
I haven't, but when I read through this, it doesn't seem like a small thing. I've had a dog, like a dog on the sidewalk, lunged at me and gave like a nip, but he missed. I mean, that's like a wild energy. To be able to hold down a dog as it's biting and ripping into your wrist and everything like that, to me, that's no small thing.
I think adrenaline probably helps a lot here because you're scuffling about. You used to wrestle, so sometimes you accidentally get hurt or like hit somewhere where it would normally hurt, but then you're in the moment, so you're like, just keep going. Do you think that's part of what's going on is like when you're in it, what would normally hurt doesn't really register until later?
You're probably right. Probably adrenaline, probably training for these guys as well.
That too. They're warriors. Their tolerance for pain is probably higher than the average soft person that's tilling. Well, I was going to say tilling fields, but actually they make the best soldiers, right? Because they're just so tough already anyway. They live a hard life.
Right.
Karsa finally glanced up to study the dogs surrounding him. At his lifting of head, they all backed away, all but one, a young, burly male who ducked low as it crept forward. Two of Delum's knives thudded into the animal, one in the throat and the other behind his right shoulder. The dog pitched to the ground with a strangled grunt, then lay still. The others of the pack retreated still further. The leader had gone motionless beneath Karsa. Baring his teeth, the warrior slowly lowered himself until his cheek lay alongside the dog's jawline. Then he whispered into the animal's ear, "You heard the death cry, friend? That was your challenger. This should please you, yes? Now you and your pack belong to me." As he spoke, his tone soft and reassuring, he slowly loosened his grip on the dog's throat. A moment later, he leaned back, shifted his weight to one side, withdrawing his arm entirely, then releasing the dog's forelimbs.
Channeling his inner Caesar Milan, doing a little side submit action.
Don't reason with it, dominate it.
I love it.
I wonder if this dog was doing the licking thing that they do when they're submitting to you. Have you ever seen that before?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the dogs will be getting too wild. I'll scruff the back of their neck and kind of just like lay them on their side. And then they'll just like be looking at me out of the corner of their eye and they'll start licking their lips a little bit. They know that they've been bad and they have to, you got to get over there and you got to, just, hey.
Show them who the pack leader is.
We need to calm down, Yeah.
Another thing that I find interesting here is without a word spoken, Karsa didn't tell Delum what he wanted to do. And somehow Delum knows like this, I don't know what you'd call it, like this energy, this understanding of what's going on between the two of them is pretty impressive.
These guys have been squatting up for thousands of hours probably. They know each other. I look at it as like people that play games together and they know what their teammates are going to do because they've worked with them so much.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they have their sort of roles. Each other.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Sometimes people let you down.
I don't know what you're referring to specifically. But
I don't know. Is there anything you think of off the top of your head?
Do you have something you want to tell me? I'm going to leave that alone.
Sometimes I'm the one that lets people down, and that happens too.
Yeah.
The beast scrambled to its feet. Karsa straightened, stepped close to the dog, smiling to see its tail droop. Delum climbed down from the ledge. He said, "War leader, I am witness to this." He retrieved his knives. Karsa said, "Delum Thord, you are both witness and participant, for I saw your knives, and they were well timed." Delum said, "The leader's rival saw his moment." Karsa said, "And you understood that." Delum said, "We now have a pack that will fight for us." Karsa said, "Aye, Delum Thord." Delum said, "I will go ahead of you back to Byroth then. The horses will need calming." Karsa said, "We shall give you a few moments." At the shelf's edge, Delum paused and glanced back at Karsa. He said, "I no longer fear the Rathid Karsa Orlong, nor the Sunid. I now believe that Urugul indeed walks with you on this journey." Karsa said, "Then know this, Delum Thord. I am not content to be champion among the Urid. One day, all the Teblor shall kneel to me. This, our journey to the Outlands, is but a scouting of the enemy we shall one day face. Our people have slept for far too long. Delim said, Karsa Orlong, I do not doubt you. Karsa's answering grin was cold. He said, Yet you once did. To that, Delim simply shrugged. Then he swung about and set off down the slope. Karsa examined his chewed wrist, then looked down at the dog and laughed. He said, You've the taste of my blood in your mouth, beast. Urgal now races to clasp your heart, and so, you and I, we are joined. Come, walk at my side. I name you Na. There were 11 adult dogs in the pack, and 3 not quite full grown. They fell in step behind Karsa and Na, leaving their lone fallen kin unchallenged ruler of the shelf beneath the cliff, until the flies came.
This was always a very cool scene for me, turning the dogs into an ally. Turning the dogs into an ally instead of killing them off or just trying to outrun them. They're just always in the background and just keep being pursued. This stuck out to me.
Karsa has been very impressive tactically so far, going back to what we were talking about earlier. He's been outsmarting the enemy at every turn.
Yeah, he's a step above. He definitely seems to be like a master tactician so far.
But not a good guy.
Yeah, what we're seeing right now, he's definitely, as you alluded to before, these certainly have the markings of creating a villain. I think that was a pretty good way to put it.
Towards midday, the 3 Urid warriors and their pack descended into the middle of the 3 small valleys on their southeasterly course across Rathid lands. The hunt they tracked had clearly been driven to desperation to have traveled so far in their search. It was also evident that the warriors ahead had avoided contact with other villages in the area. Their lengthening failure had become a shame that haunted them. Karsa was mildly disappointed in that, but he consoled himself that the tale of their deeds would travel nonetheless, sufficient to make their return journey across Rathid territory a deadlier and more interesting task.
That sounds like he's getting a little bored. Make it an interesting task. That's the impression that I get initially.
I took this as he wanted the news of their deeds to spread like wildfire. If he could live stream this, he would. He'd be on Kick live streaming this right now.
Yeah, it sounds like he wants a little more action. You're right.
Yeah, and then the more interesting task, maybe for him, maybe he enjoys the thinking of the tactical ways he can outsmart his enemies, and to him it's a challenge that he enjoys. So maybe that's what it is. Because it does seem like everything's been exactly as he planned it so far, so maybe he's like, well, I haven't really had to do much besides exactly what we planned on doing so far.
Yeah.
Delim judged that the hunt was barely a third of a day ahead. They had slowed their pace, sending outriders to either side in search of a trail that did not yet exist. Karsa would not permit himself a gloat concerning that, however. There were, after all, 2 other parties from the Rathid village. These ones probably on foot and moving cautiously, leaving few signs of their stealthy passage. At any time, they might cross the Urid trail. The pack of dogs remained close on the upwind side, loping effortlessly along the trotting horses. Byroth had simply shaken his head at hearing Delim's recount of Karsa's exploits, though of Karsa's ambitions, Delim curiously said nothing. They reached the valley floor, a place of tumbled stone amidst birch, black spruce, aspen, and alder. The remnants of a river seeped through the moss and rotting stumps, forming black pools that hinted nothing of their depth. Many of these sinkholes were hidden among boulders and treefalls. Their pace slowed as they cautiously worked their way deeper into the forest. A short while later, they came to the first of the mud-packed wooden walkways the Rathid of this valley had built long ago and still maintained, if only indifferently. Lush grasses filling the joins attested to this particular one's disuse, but its direction suited the Urid warriors, and so they dismounted and led their horses up onto the raised track. It creaked and swayed beneath the combined weight of horses, Teblor, and dogs. Byroth said, "We'd best spread out and stay on foot." Karsa crouched and studied the roughly dressed logs. He said, "The wood is still sound." Byroth said, "But the stilts are seated in mud, war leader." Karsa said, "Not mud," Byroth gilled. "Peat." Delim said, "Karsa Orlong is right," swinging himself back onto his destrier. He went on, "The way may pitch, but the cross struts beneath will keep it from twisting. We ride down the center in single file." To Byroth, Karsa said, "There's little point in taking this path if we then creep along it like snails." Byroth said, "The risk, war leader, is that we become far more visible." Karsa said, "Best we move along it quickly then." Byroth grimaced and said, "As you say, Karsa Orlong." Delim in the lead, they rode at a slow canter down the center of the walkway. The pack followed. To either side, the only trees that reached to the eye level of the mounted warriors were dead birch, their leafless, black branches wrapped in the web of caterpillar nests. The living trees, aspen and alder and elm, reached no higher than the chest height with their fluttering canopy of dusty green leaves. Taller black spruce was visible in the distance. Most of these looked to be dead or dying. Dellum said, "The old river is returning. This forest slowly drowns." Karsa grunted, then said, "This valley runs into others that all lead northward, all the way to the Burid Fissure. Palk was among the Teblor elders who gathered there 60 years ago. The river of ice filling the fissure had died, suddenly, and had begun to melt." Behind Karsa, Byroth spoke. "We never learned what the elders of all the tribes discovered up there, nor if they had found whatever it was they were seeking." Dellum muttered, "I did not know they were seeking anything in particular. The death of the ice river was heard in 100 valleys, including our own. Did they not travel to the fissure simply to discover what had happened?" Karsa shrugged and said, "Palk told me of countless beasts that had been frozen within the ice for numberless centuries, becoming visible amidst the shattered blocks. Fur and flesh thawing, the ground and sky alive with crows and mountain vultures. There was ivory, but most of it was too badly crushed to be of any worth. The river had a black heart, or so its death revealed. But whatever lay within that heart was either gone or destroyed. Even so, there were signs of an ancient battle in that place. The bones of children, weapons of stone, all broken." I wonder at the black heart of the river. What do you make of that?
I read through this at a fever pitch and probably glossed over it. Looking at it now, I still, unfortunately, don't have a great answer for what it could be. It certainly seems mysterious, and it looks like, probably for me, a good place to remember this particular section of what he's talking about. An ancient battle in that place, bones of children, weapons of stone. I'm wondering if this can connect later, but at this point, I really am not sure what that means that the river had a black heart. Do you have any idea?
No, I mean, it's all pure conjecture. I was thinking Kurald Galain is darkness. I don't know if it's like a river fed through a warren or something. That's probably like way out there. Another thing could be like maybe the water coming out of it has no value. It's poisonous water in some way for people drinking it. I don't know.
Okay.
I just thought it was weird that they said it had a black heart. And maybe this is just the way they talk. Who knows?
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me also was the weapons of stone. Who else do we know that used weapons of stone?
Right. A little Talani Moss reference there or something.
Or their predecessors before they took the vow.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, now that you talk about that, I mean, that kind of makes sense where they talk about, you know, fur and all those kinds of things like Talani Moss and the A and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It could.
Byroth said, "This is more than I have ever..." He stopped as the walkway, which had been reverberating to their passage, had suddenly acquired a deeper, syncopating thunder. The walkway ahead made a bend 40 paces distant, to the left, disappearing behind trees. The pack of dogs began snapping their jaws in voiceless warning. Karsa twisted round and saw 200 paces behind them on the walkway, a dozen wrathed warriors on foot.
You know, I just thought about this as we've been praising them for their tactical prowess this whole time and how good Dellum has been about covering their tracks and backtracking and everything. And here it seems as though they are taken completely by surprise that all of a sudden wrathed warriors discover them.
Walk into an ambush?
Yeah, just like walk right into an ambush. Exactly.
Oh, yeah. So let's see how he handles it in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a great point. Weapons were lifted in silent promise. Yet the sound of hoofs, Karsa swung forward again, to see 6 riders pitch around the bend. War cries rang in the air. Byroth bellowed, "Clear a space!" driving his horse past Karsa, and then Dellum. The bear skull sprang into the air, snapping as it reached the length of the straps, and Byroth began whirling the massive bound skull over his and his horse's head, using both hands. His knees high on the destrier's shoulders, the whirling skull made a deep, droning sound. His horse loped forward.
Like a massive bolas or something like that.
Yeah.
Originally, even when he had mentioned before, they use wolf skulls, like a
3
couple of wolf skulls.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know why at that point it wasn't really clicking until now.
Can you imagine the noise this thing would make? I would love to see this on screen, man. This is a core memory for sure.
Yeah. Certainly how your mind pictures these things. But when you talk about the noise, that noise would be incredible to hear. And something that came to my head as I was reading through it this time was, are you familiar with the Aztec death whistles?
Yes. But in case someone isn't, you want to describe them?
Well, so I'm not an expert, but it sounds like kind of a whistle that ancient Aztec tribes would make. And when you blow through them a certain way, it sounds like screams of humans. Either like, I don't know if it's just like a fevered scream or like a death scream, like the death rattle of somebody. But when blown, you can find these videos on YouTube. It's pretty haunting. And I could imagine if you had multiples of these going at the same time, I think they were used to put fear into the enemy's hearts. This is kind of that image that comes to my head as he's whirling that giant skull.
This whole scene was always really interesting to me because it's very cinematic from the perspective they're on this walkway and they're kind of above the tree line.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really pretty high up in the air. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, single file as well.
Yeah.
No room for maneuvering.
The trees being kind of about chest height or something, like just envisioning this whole thing taking place above the tree line instead of low in the forest was interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Byroth he's riding the horse is galloping ahead, and he's swinging this thing around over his head while he's riding the horse.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty athletic thing to be doing. And then he's presumably going to aim it while all this is going on.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
There's a lot of factors going on here that are very impressive.
The Rathid riders were at full charge. They rode two abreast, the edge of the walkway less than half an arm's length away on either side. They had closed to within 20 paces of Byroth when he released the bear skull. When 2 or 3 wolf skulls were used in this fashion, it was to bind or break legs. But Byroth's target was higher. The skull struck the destrier on the left with the force that shattered the horse's chest. Blood sprayed from the animal's nose and mouth. Crashing down, it fouled the beast beside it. No more than the crack of a single hoof against his shoulder, but sufficient to make it veer wildly and plunge down off the walkway. Legs snapped. The Rathid warrior flew over his horse's head. What an amazing throw that was. The reaction time is what really impressed me also here. He immediately reacted and went into action.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
We talk about Karsa's planning. Byroth has been crafting this thing for a couple of days, so certainly he had something in mind with it as well. Very cool.
Yeah. The rider of the first horse landed with bone-breaking impact on the walkway at the very hoofs of Byroth's destrier. Those hoofs punched down on the man's head in quick succession, leaving a shattered mess. The charge floundered. Another horse went down, stumbling with a scream over the wildly kicking beast that now blocked the walkway. Loosing the Urid war cry, Byroth drove his mount forward. A surging leap carried them over the first down destrier. The Rathid warrior from the other fallen horse was just clambering clear and had time to look up to see Byroth's sword blade reach the bridge of his nose. Delim was suddenly behind his comrade. 2 knives darted through the air, passing Byroth on his right. There was a sharp report as a Rathid's heavy sword blade slashed across to block one of the knives, then a wet gasp as the second knife found the man's throat. 2 of the enemy remained, 1 each for Delim and Byroth, and so the duels could begin. Karsa, after watching the effect of Byroth's initial attack, had wheeled his mount round, sword in his hands, blade flashing into Havoc's vision, and they were charging back down the walkway towards the pursuing band. The dog pack split to either side to avoid the thundering hoofs, then raced after rider and horse. Ahead, 8 adults and 4 youths. A barked order sent the youths to either side of the walkway, then down. The adults wanted room, and, seeing their obvious confidence as they formed an inverted V spanning the walkway, weapons ready, Karsa laughed. They wanted him to ride down into the center of that inverted V, a tactic that, while it maintained Havoc's fierce speed, also exposed horse and rider to flanking attacks. Speed counted for much in the engagement to come. The Rathid's expectations fit nicely into the attacker's intent, had that attacker been someone other than Karsa Orlong. He bellowed, "Uragal!" lifting himself high on Havoc's shoulders. He shouted, "Witness!" He held his sword, point forward, over his destrier's head, and fixed his gaze on the Rathid warrior on the V's extreme left. Havoc sensed the shift in attention and angled his charge just moments before contact, hooves pounding along the very edge of the walkway. The Rathid directly before them managed a single backward step, swinging a 2-handed overhead chop at Havoc's snout as he went. Karsa took that blade on his own, even as he twisted and threw his right leg forward, his left back. Havoc turned beneath him, surged in towards the center of the walkway. The V had collapsed, and every Rathid warrior was on Karsa's left. Havoc carried him diagonally across the walkway. Keening his delight, Karsa slashed and chopped repeatedly, his blade finding flesh and bone as often as weapon. Havoc pitched around before reaching the opposite edge, and lashed out his hind legs. At least one connected, flinging a shattered body from the bridge.
I know that you and Billy have talked a lot about the different horses throughout the series, And here we have Havoc, and I guess I shouldn't even just Havoc, because even Delam's horse and even Barroth's horse, they have all been impressive. Everything that they're doing in various ways, whether that's just now sensing a shift and then moving, positioning in various ways without too much input, sees the sword point overhead and he's doing something. The warriors are talking, the horses kind of surround them earlier. It's just like all of these little things that these horses are doing. It's really amazing.
Trained for battle. And Havoc in particular is a very impressive animal. These kicks, stamping, and a lot of savage activities coming out of this horse. A cut above the Grawl horse, if you will. It seems like the Grawl had a lot of attitude, but this one is an actual horse bred for a different type of battle.
Yeah, the Grawl have a level of meanness that runs through them, but these guys definitely have the training.
The pack then arrived. Snarling bodies hurling onto the wrathed warriors, most of whom had turned when engaging Karsa, and so presented exposed backs to the frenzied dogs. Shrieks filled the air. Can you imagine if one of your dogs attacked you after you last saw it? You know it's your pack, and then the betrayal during battle, the dog just all of a sudden shows up and kills you?
I hadn't thought about that, yeah. You've been tending to these dogs, I don't know if they feed them or not, but yeah, all of a sudden you look into those eyes and you're like, I know you. And then they
rip your throat out.
Yeah.
It's messed up, man.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Karsa spun Havoc round. They plunged back into the savage press. Two Wrathed had managed to fight clear of the dogs, blood spraying from their blades as they backed up the walkway. Bellowing a challenge, Karsa drove towards them, and was shocked to see them both leap from the walkway. Karsa shouted, "Bloodless cowards! I witness! Your youth's witness! These damn dogs witness!" He saw them reappear, weapons gone, scrambling and stumbling across the bog. That surprised me a bit. Do you think those warriors go back and lie to the tribe like Palk did, or do they live in shame for the remainder of their days?
What choice do they have, I wonder? Because if the Wrathed are the same as the Urid, then they would be like a prideful tribe. And if they went back, tail between their legs, I can't imagine what their lives would be like. But also, returning empty-handed, like how would you even perpetuate that lie? Like all your weapons are gone and you've run off and you can't even say, you have no idea how the battle transpired. What happens if you say, yeah, we took Karsa out, we took them all out, and then let's say Karsa lets one other live, they come back, and then your whole story comes undone? I don't know what you'd do here.
I think we were going to circle back on how these tribes would incorporate into the Urid if they did. And the warriors that are actually fighting to the death right now, those are the type that would, under no circumstances, probably accept a regime change where they're going to bend the knee to somebody else. These other guys kind of look at them like that dog, where their survival is top of their list of priorities. And so they would be the ones that would bend the knee.
Sub-question, would Karsa want them?
Good question.
Would I even care? They come back groveling now like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to join. But Karsa says, I witnessed you run away and I called you a coward. Do I even want you? So kind of seems like a balancing act of who would you want in these situations? I feel like you'd be more inclined to have the guys who are going to stand and fight. Sort of similar to the SEALs in a certain way. Like, who's going to quit first? Those are the guys I don't want. I don't know how he would play it.
Maybe they just take the women.
Yeah, just start over.
Delam and Byroth arrived, dismounting to add their swords to the maniacal frenzy of the surviving dogs as they tore unceasing at fallen Wrathed. Karsa drew Havoc to one side, eyes still on the fleeing warriors, who had been joined now by the four youths. He shouted, "I witness! Urugal witnesses!" Na, black and gray hide barely visible beneath splashes of gore, panted up to stand beside Havoc, his muscles twitching but no wounds showing. Karsa glanced back and saw that four more dogs remained, whilst a fifth had lost a foreleg and limped a red circle off to one side. Karsa said, "Delam, bind that one's leg. We will sear it anon." Byroth asked, "What use a three-legged hunting dog, war leader?" breathing heavy. Karsa said, "Even a three-legged dog has ears and a nose," Byroth gilled. "One day she will lie gray-nosed and fat before my hearth. This I swear. Now, is either of you wounded?"
I can't remember if it was ever discussed, like, what these dogs actually are. I was wondering, could they be a or some descendant of? They seem kind of large to me.
I think they're large. First, I don't think it's mentioned. There's not a real big description of them. I always pictured them as kind of a mongrel cattle dog breed.
Maybe something similar to Chain of Dogs, like those hounds. In Deadhouse Gates, when you've got those cattle dogs that are following...
The Wiccan cattle dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, in a way, different coloration, but yeah, a little bit like that.
Okay.
I know they don't have cattle here, but they have the horses. I don't know if... Actually, you bring up a good point. I don't know what makes more sense. They are hunting dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Did they breed them from wolves? I don't know.
That's what I just started to wonder, if maybe they're some kind of semi-domesticated wolf hybrid, maybe.
I never really put too much thought into it, since they're not really described.
Mm-hmm.
They always just very similar to the Wiccan cattle dog is what look like to me.
All right. Going off on a tangent there. Maybe it's probably not that important, but
it's interesting to make me think about, does it make more sense that they look like something else living in a forest, not having cattle around?
Yeah.
Does that factor in here,
Right.
Byroth said scratches and shrugged, turning away, and this was in response to Karsa asking if they took any injuries. Dellum said, I have lost a finger, but not an important one, as he drew out a leather strap and approached the wounded dog.
Like it's no big deal. Lost a finger, back to work. Crazy.
That's got to hurt real bad. I remember when my finger got smashed at work that one time, and it hurt for months afterwards. So losing a finger, I'm sure, hurts equally as bad, and you kind of lose function of that hand in some way a little bit for a while it's healing, unless I guess you're real tough.
Yeah, or if it's just not an important finger.
Okay.
According to Dellum,
Yeah. What would be a non-important finger? A pinky? Ring finger?
I would probably want my pinky. Well, actually, that's hard. It would be either the third or the fourth. I'm not sure which one, because I feel like they have equal importance when you're gripping stuff.
I was going to say, for grip strength, I think the ring finger would be worse than the pinky.
Yeah, there's definitely more strength in that finger than the pinky. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to ask. One of the guys I work with is missing a couple of fingers. I might have to.
The pinky is a pretty important finger. Shift, escape, tab. I mean, those I mean, that's going to be hard to reach those with another finger,
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like I recently heard somebody talking about fingers and how important they are and how completely intricate the hand is.
They're talking about robots, probably. Optimus robot.
Yeah. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It was Elon. And saying toes, not such a big deal, but fingers, very important.
Yeah. I think toes do play an important part for balance. Probably talk to a podiatrist. They'll probably tell you how important the toe is.
Right.
Karsa looked once more at the retreating Rathid. They had almost reached a stand of black spruce. The war leader sent them a final sneer, then laid a hand on Havoc's brow. He said, My father spoke true, Havoc. I have never ridden such a horse as you. An ear had cocked at his words. Karsa leaned forward and set his lips to the beast's brow. He whispered, We become, you and I, legend. Legend, Havoc. Straightening, he studied the sprawl of corpses on the walkway and smiled. He said, It is time for trophies, my brothers. Byroth, did your bear skull survive? Byroth said, I believe so, war leader. Karsa said, Your deed was our victory, Byroth Guild. Byroth turned and studied Karsa through slitted eyes. He said, You ever surprise me, Karsa Orlong. Karsa said, As your strength does me, Byroth Guild. Byroth hesitated, then nodded. He said, I am content to follow you, war leader. Karsa thought, You ever were, Byroth Guild, and that is the difference between us. And thus the chapter ends.
What a statement right there. Like, I mean, it's very complex to me. It's like, in one hand, a little bit of praise, and then immediately followed by some kind of inner feeling of you're less than me. I don't know. It's an interesting wordplay. I like it.
He knows he's the leader.
Yeah.
He knows. It's not
he knows.
Thinks. He knows.
Yeah, you're right.
In his bones.
Yeah.
For standout moments, the subterfuge that Karsa and company used to confuse their pursuers, particularly the walking the horses backwards. For whatever reason, the horses walking backwards, apparently not in the exact same hoof prints that they used going forwards. Just like that really impressed me for some reason.
Yeah, it's good. The brutality of these skirmishes, the one before they get to the village, and then this one on the walkway, visceral. It has a way of sticking in your mind how kind of grisly some of these attacks are.
Yeah. The way it's described, I think he goes out of his way with the anatomy in particular to talk about cutting through a collarbone and continuing off, the head flying off in a different direction. He's really diving into how grisly these deaths are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As bad as that stuff was, what the Rathid did to Karsa's cousin really stuck out to me as pure savagery. That was rage bait of the highest order right there.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the desecration kind of adds another level to that.
Putting the head below the body, but then smearing it in excrement and taking the eyes and the tongue out, I'm sure that's some symbolism among the tribes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just really bad.
Yeah. The chief's wife, how she clearly has different memories of what happened when Paul came through their village all those years ago. I think it raises some really interesting questions about that interaction.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing worse than someone over-embellishing war stories and glorifying something that didn't take place.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the fact that these alleged deeds were used to twist Karsa's mind and kind of turn him against his father, it makes it even more messed up.
Yeah.
Paul is a real piece of crap, apparently.
Yeah. Stolen valor for sure.
Yes.
Talking about that. And like you said, how he ingrained it, how Karsa is repeating these stories over and over. And even his father, Sinig, he wasn't taking the bait, but Karsa took it and is running with it.
Yeah. I appreciated the chief's wife's quick wit. The female ability to walk circles around men in conversation was on full display there.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that aspect of that interaction.
I agree. I liked it too.
And then this was not really a highlight, but a low moment. Karsa's treatment of the daughter really showed me how bad of a person he is at this point in time.
And you have mentioned in the past how Karsa is one of your favorite characters. Maybe you can tell me how he's one of your favorite characters when stuff like this is going on.
Okay. I think what I appreciate about the character is the journey that he goes on, and we see what he starts out as, and it's where he ends up. I think the thing that I like most about him is he does not bend for anyone. And for us in modern society, every day we're bending to something, whether it's a government, whether it is a boss at work. We don't have that level of autonomy to just do what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Right now he's doing really bad stuff. Later on, we'll see some of the stuff that he gets up to. So yes, some listeners might think this guy thinks this is one of his favorite characters. He's doing all this really bad crap. What does that say about me liking him? It's more about the journey that he goes on and how he changes over time, I think.
Not going to let one instance define him overall.
Yeah, but then also his unwillingness to bend, his unbreakable nature. That's really the big thing about him.
Okay.
How about you?
How do I feel about Karsa?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. At this point, what we know about him so far definitely has the villains in the makings kind of vibe. Apart from being like an incredible warrior, you don't see a lot of redeeming qualities in him up to this point. The way he treats everybody is definitely, you are beneath me. Like, I am top dog, and I will make sure that I let everybody know it. I'm not going to stay quiet about it. I'm not going to hold my tongue. So yeah, at this point, he's an incredibly impressive warrior and tactician. But apart from that, yeah, you think of him as he's a bad guy, like you said.
I look at him kind of like the leader of the dog pack. They're only following him because he's the strongest right now. But there's no loyalty there.
You're right. You definitely see that. Maybe you see a little smidgen of loyalty from Delum, but certainly not from Byroth.
Yeah.
Another thing that set out was Karsa's taming this pack of dogs. I really enjoyed that whole scene. I thought that was really cool.
The true alpha. Excellent understanding of pack behavior. And you bringing up Caesar Milan was perfect. I mean, he's embodying that.
Yeah, I think we were both on the same page with that.
Yes.
Byroth with his giant bear skull bolos was just epic. Epic.
I think that was the highlight of that battle for me, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's such a core memory for me. It's really unlike anything we've seen so far in a lot of these battles. It's just one of those things that thing hitting that horse's chest. When I was in the 5th grade, I was playing soccer and they kicked a soccer ball and I was running full speed towards them and they kicked it hard and it hit me in the chest. And I imagine that times 100 with this horse, just like crushes its chest. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We needed to circle back on the generational hatred thing. There was a couple examples that we saw throughout this section. The instance with Karsa's cousin where they desecrated the body and then he's answering that. And then the things Karsa and his raiding party are doing to this other tribe between taking their women, potentially impregnating them with their own children, doing everything they can to shame these warriors. It is building on the hatred that they've developed over time. It seems like there's no getting out of this cycle at this point. It's just back and forth. It's punitive. And it seems to be, like you pointed out earlier, escalating in some cases.
Yeah. Negative feedback loop. It just continues on and on and on. Yeah, I don't know what you could actually do to break the cycle in sort of tribal communities like this. It seems like it's just ingrained, and that's just the way it's going.
Well, you don't have to raid the other people. You could just stick to your area.
You don't have to. Maybe the way out is, as Karsa wants to unite the clans into one. Once something like that happens, and that could break the cycle potentially of continuing on down that path.
Yeah, but that's going to be a bloody situation trying to get everybody together. There would be a lot of stuff that would have to get worked out, and then it's almost like a subjugation type thing where the other tribes, they have to bow to them almost.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know that they would accept them with. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah. Well, it certainly falls in line with some of the other things we've talked about, where if it's not the women having to do what they need to survive, it would be the men as well. If we were going to come under one roof, so to speak, you have to either get in line or you're out as well. So I don't know what that looks like.
Great job today, Dane.
Great job, Kamraun. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I really enjoyed today's episode and had a great time going over this with you.
Likewise, my friend. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.